Before we dive into our NAFSA Culinary Mentee panel, my name is Latasha Redhouse. I'm the IAC American Indian Foods Program Director. And we just have a quick PSA, but it's super important. We just want to hear the stories from producers and just wanted to share this quick video before we hop into the panel discussion. So 1 second.
Hey everybody, Keir Johnson-Ray is here with Intertribal Agriculture Council. I'd like to talk about participating in IAC's surveys. Help us shape Indian Ag's COVID-19 responses. Go to indianag.org/resilient. You'll find 4 surveys covering tribal producers, tribal and community leaders, American Indian foods participants, community grocers, food hubs, and cooperatives. The preliminary results are indicating tremendous impacts across Indian country's ag sectors as a result of COVID-19. We're noticing issues in workforce reduction, sales, supply chain, and loss of cash reserves. The important information you provide to us helps us inform local and national programming and curriculum development for remote learning opportunities. USDA and partner organizations, agencies, and philanthropy have indicated a strong interest in reviewing IAC's results to inform their programming as well. Your participation truly is shaping the future of Indian agriculture during the COVID-19 era and beyond. Preliminary results indicate decisive need for assistance to support overall community food systems, access to financing, networking, and professional development. We're learning about the extent of supply chain impacts and the inherent opportunities for our tribal producers in the marketing of their products directly. There is strong interest to buy from Indian country producers. Help us educate Congress with regard to our community's needs during COVID-19 and beyond. IAC is seeking your support to provide the data we rely upon as Indian country's voice in food, agriculture, and natural resource management. Go to indianag.org/resilient to bring light to your community's needs. Scroll down to the Share Your Stories section. If you're involved in our virtual Intertribal Food Summit, we're asking that you take our 5-minute survey as part of your participation in the summit. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for allowing me to share the space and sharing that quick PSA with everyone. But I'll just turn the time over to our cool panelists. So.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Elena Terry, and I am the Native American Food Sovereignty Alliance's Food and Culinary Program Coordinator. And I'm excited to bring some of our mentees here to have a discussion with you today. The Food and Culinary Program has been, the mentorship program has been in effect now for 2 years, and we're starting our 3rd year, and NAFSA has expanded the programming, and we are really excited to share some of the stories and some of how our mentees have kind of got on this path. And we are lucky enough to have Andy Murphy, who is the creator, host, and producer of the Toasted Sister podcast, a show about Indigenous food. She's also a producer for the Native American Calling and is a freelance journalist, and she'll be our moderator today. So thank you very much for joining us, mentees. It's great to see you, and thank you very much, Andy, for helping us out. I look forward to hearing what you guys have to say.
All right. Cool. Well, thank you so much for inviting me to take part in this discussion here. It's actually Native America Calling that I am a producer with. Yeah, I know some of you know my podcast, and that this is all I do. I talk to Native chefs and producers and people who are working in this food movement all the time. and that's also part of my job at Native America Calling too, is to really highlight those issues and topics that we see as important in Native America. So if you ever are curious about the kind of work that we do at Native America Calling, just go to our website, nativeamericacalling.com, and you'll find shows on every single thing in Native America, almost every single thing. So I would like to just give a little bit of time for all the panelists to introduce themselves. Can we start with Krishna Ohm? I think you're on mute.
Hey everyone, thanks for the introduction, and I was really excited to be invited to be on the panel today. So just a little bit about myself. Born and raised in Boston. My background is that I'm mixed. My dad is from Peru and my mom is from here, and I'm of Quechua heritage. And I'm a chef, a personal chef for work, but I'm also a chef instructor in a local cooking school, as well as I consider myself a food historian. I really have focused a lot of my research on indigenous foods of South America, specifically from the Andean region, and also look at how identity plays out on the plate or on the table, on the serving table, whether it's in private or public spaces. And so I have been on this journey a lot. I'm from the city, so a lot of my journey has been very much in my head, in books, with family. And I came to know about food summits and NAFSA only a couple of years ago. And I actually met Chef Elena Terry at the New England Food Summit that was in Connecticut a couple summers ago. And when I connected with her and I connected with other chefs at that summit, it just, we'll talk more about it, I'm sure, on this panel, but it just opened my world, my community, my spiritual life exponentially. And I'm forever grateful for one of my really good friends from college who said, hey, did you know this was happening in your neck of the woods? And I was like, oh, I've never heard of this. And then got involved, and it's changed my life. And I finally feel like I'm not isolated in my path. I found all these other like-minded people, artists, parents, cooks, dreamers, co-conspirators, like everything. It's amazing the connections that I've made through NAFSA and through the Food Summit. So I'm really grateful. Thanks.
Awesome. All right. And Daryl, Montana?
Yeah, I'm one of those co-conspirators, I guess.
Yes.
My name is Daryl Montana. I live in Los Angeles, California. I am Don Autumn from Southern Arizona, but my mother relocated during the 70s to Los Angeles. My journey started about 2 years ago when I first heard of the Red Lakes, or the Meskwaki Food Summit. I seen, well, actually my wife sent me a link about the mentorship program. So I was like, this looks fun, this looks interesting. And I applied, and I surprisingly got in, and I went to, what was it? Des Moines, I believe. Oh no, it was Meskwaki. And then I just being around those caliber of chefs and just picturing all the wonderful foods that they've created and helped create it. It was just I guess a life-changing experience for me. But we'll probably get into that a little bit more. So next.
All right, let's go to May Hay next.
Hey, Waju Kinoe, Mehan Indigenikas. I'm from the lower east side of Lake Huron, but I live on the beautiful ancestral lands of the Monacan and Tudelo people here in Virginia. And I work for Virginia Tech as an assistant professor of American Indian Studies. My first degree was in human nature relationships, sort of focusing on geology and how people see opportunities in the landscape. Or opportunities with the landscape. And that led me to being a teacher. I was a middle school teacher for about 15 years. Those are my people. Then I got my PhD in Indigenous Worldview and Science Education because I felt like we have a lot of land-based knowledge to share. And I felt like we don't have the confidence to share it. Like for generations now, we've been made to feel like we don't know anything, and it breaks my heart. And so I work with changing that paradigm. And so my new work now in American Indian Studies, I am a land steward for Indigenous community garden here, and we rematriate seeds to our tribal populations after they gift them to us and entrust them to us. And from my experience with the food summit last year, I have done every week talking circles to talk about how the land is helping us create ceremony through cooking and spending time together, and taking people to the garden and introducing them to our natural relatives. And I'm working on some other things right now, but I'm sure we'll get into that in a minute. But and with some of the chefs that I met through the Intertribal Food Summit. So I'm very excited for once we're not locked up anymore to get moving. Thank you. Miigwech, Yamayu.
Cool, thanks, May. How about Angus Ogilvy? Am I pronouncing that right, Ogilvy? Hello. Seems like we have a delay. Oh, you're still on mute. Unmute it. Got it. All right. Zoom meetings. Oh, there we go. Oh my goodness. Is it his connection? Am I hearing the same thing? It's very, I can't understand you. It's very choppy, very robotic. You want to try again? Okay, still the same thing. Do you want to move like towards the, what do you call that thing where the Wi-Fi comes out?
Move closer to your router.
Move closer to your router. All right. Well, still can't hear you. When I guess when we get that fixed, when you get that fixed on that side, we can come back and do an introduction, or you can do an introduction for yourself. But one of the questions I wanted to ask everybody on the panel was, what's one of the most important things you learned in your months and years in this program? What's one of the things that kind of just bursted open for you about your own food and about maybe somebody else's food from a different tribe? Let's start with Krishna.
Okay, thanks. That's a great question. The one thing, so I learned about the food summit. The first food summit I went to was 2 years ago, but I was a mentee last year, and that was with the summit in Michigan last spring. And the thing that I took away from that the most, and I'm hoping, I've been very emotional this week. I keep crying over everything, so I'm hoping I'll kind of keep it together today. But I learned about community and trust. And my first experience is I've been working in kitchens, and oftentimes when you work in kitchens and you're new and you don't, people assume you don't know anything, and you're bossed around a lot. It's a very machista kind of environment. And yet I thrive in that environment. I don't mind it. I think it's funny and I'm entertained by it, and I can hang, and I have tough skin, so it's okay. But it was such a completely different experience at that summit in Michigan last year. When I walked into that kitchen, instead of the assumption was that I knew nothing, the assumption was that I came with a gift. And then I was certainly directed to do certain things, but there was trust involved in that, and just saying, so you're going to go and, this is like the funniest thing. I was like, they're like, you're going to make a bison paella outside, and then dropped it and left. And we were all like, okay, who knows how to make paella, goes into that. And it was this amazing experience of like trying to figure out with the ingredients that we had, how we could replicate something that was like a paella, which is it's very Spanish and it's very different from using indigenous American ingredients. So how can we mimic some of the elements of that? It was an amazing experience, but it was just that trust, right? You're going to do this. It was Sean Sherman. He was like, you're going to do this. And then just like walked away. We were all like, ah, and it was amazing. And then we are outside with this huge paella pit and out on the fire, like mixing paella and stuff outside. And it was amazing. And it was bomb. And I just was like, I've never had chefs trust so much. I've just never, it was this very community-based, community learning. We all have something to give kind of environment. I just never had experienced that before in a kitchen. And then then there was this ongoing mentorship, every conversation over whether it was like putting corn into roast, or it was grinding something, or putting spice into the meat, or whatever it was. There were these beautiful conversations that would happen over the food about culture, shared culture, things that were slightly different kinds of foods, different ways of preparation, and storytelling that happened in a very natural way, which is what I feel. But again, working in commercial kitchens, you don't do that. People don't talk. They're like rushing, and it's very competitive, and it just doesn't necessarily always encourage a lot of creativity, because usually people want you to just follow their rules. And this was an amazing experience. So what I really took away from that, and this is why it was so life-changing for me, what the Food Summit and what NAFSA has shown me is a really deep community, deep trust, and a different way of just simply living and breathing into the food that I have never experienced before. And it's something that I dreamed of, but I didn't know existed until I was in that environment last year. So it completely changed my worldview in terms of what it could look like when you care for community, what it looks like when you are caretakers of our plant relatives and the food and the ingredients, and you put all of that love and that care into that food, and what that can look like. And it was just an amazing blessing, and it's changed me.
Awesome. That's so cool. How about you, Daryl?
For me, it was just the fact that the food and the strength and the knowledge of learning about, what it does and how it can strengthen the body, how it can mend the soul, how it can, just uplift the spirit in our own traditional foods. A lot of times we have lost that for, I don't know, it's just eating food now, it's just but when we go back to our traditional foods, it brings us, it uplifts us, it just, you just get more emotional with dealing, or with even foraging, cooking, picking, cleaning it. It's just, it's more of a bond with your food. But Krista's right, that the 2 years I've been a mentee, I've learned a lot from seeing all the chefs. I've actually enrolled into culinary school this past semester, and I just want to fall back and, just pass along my knowledge of what I learned in the past 2 years, which is a great deal. And I actually had my first traditional meal last year, which I served about 100 people, and people raved about it and loved it. And this is something that I want to build on, and I want to teach, and I want everybody to know, especially indigenous people, that we've got to go back to our old systems. We got to go back to, going out in the bush, looking for stuff, foraging, staying away from processed foods. I was watching your show yesterday, and talking about fry bread. It's just not one of our foods. I also made the wife wanted some choya buds yesterday, so I had some choya buds, and I made her what is it? A pico de gallo choya. So it's just, I can't see, but it's my my background probably. But
Yeah.
it's just strengthening our community, strengthening our, passing along what we've all learned. That's just, that's what I want to pass on to especially my kids, that, food is sacred. Food is, will be always there, and we just have to keep it, traditional, and keep it for them, keep it for the 7 generations that are going to be coming before us.
Cool. All right, and if you guys don't know, the show that he's talking about is Taste the Nation. It's on Hulu right now, and it's produced and made by Padma Lakshmi and me, and Felicia Ruiz and Twyla Casador from the Apaches over there, and Brian Yazzie were part of that, the native episode on that show. So it's called Taste the Nation if you're interested. Looks like we have Angus back. Angus, how's your audio? You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm back. I gave
you
up
go.
on the whole tablet system that I had going on. Just switched to my phone. Way better. I can hear everybody. It's great.
You sound good too.
Well, bonjour. I'm Angus. I'm up here in Michigan. I've been cooking ever since I was 8, floating around restaurants that my uncles were a part of. And then when I was about like a teenager, I was like, I always ask questions like, there's more to indigenous food than just rye bread and corn soup. There's more to it. There's always something more. And like everyone was like, oh, it's only the corn soup, maybe some sweet meat and some wild rice during ceremonies, but that's all that there is. And I was out in Arizona at my chef internship being trained, and I learned about a food summit that was going on up in Flagstaff, I believe, at a museum. And Loretta was there, and it just like it opened my eyes to like what indigenous food was. Like I never even heard the words pre-colonial contact foods before that first food summit. And so it was more or less like a drive after that, like, oh my gosh, there is more to native food, and I'm being trained to cook French food and Polynesian foods and all these other foods, but I've never worked with any chefs that were indigenous chefs. And then fast forward to 2014 or 2015, I believe it was, when the Indigenous Food Summit happened at GJOC. Dan and Kevin put that one on, and Brian Yazzie was there, and Loretta, and a ton of other people. And it was just like, there's actually chefs out there cooking not just corn soup, not just their variety of wild rice soup, but like pushing the envelope of what indigenous food is and what it is to cook, not just from farm to table, but we're going to go out, we're going to forage this, we're going to harvest this from this land, from wherever you're at, and use this. And it was just like the most uplifting and like spiritually connected feeling I ever felt to food. And ever since that moment, it's just been like, oh no, indigenous food can go further. Oh, we can incorporate this ingredient to this. Oh, we can, try to mix this with that, make something that has so much flavor and so much intent into the dish that it's like you want to keep eating it. Me and my buddy Cam Scott, we do Jibaquan Foods, and our saying that we have is we cook leftovers. Like we want to cook something that you're proud to like eat the next day. And not only that, but it tastes just as good as when you made it that first day. But that Buju, miigwech for having me, by the way. Thank you. That's all. That's my little introduction spiel.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's have you answer that question that I asked everybody else. What's one of the most important things you learned doing this kind of work as long as you've been a mentee?
Really like to just like keep going. Everybody in this chef community that's been built is all about like, oh, don't worry about it. yeah, if you messed it up, we're gonna make it again. Like, just pick yourself up, do it again. Pick yourself up, do it again. Which is like something that is instilled in you as a chef as you're going through being trained in like at like kitchens, you know, high pressure kitchens. You know, you got to scoop yourself back up. But to have like that mentality and that like sense of community inside of that food network is like one of the biggest lessons. Is like it doesn't matter if like somebody doesn't like what you did. Like there's somebody that did like it. You know, there's satisfaction in pushing that envelope and trying something different with indigenous foods.
All right. And May, same question. Was there a moment where, like, you know, you learned something pretty profound in all of this?
I think everything I've learned is profound from this network.
Uh-huh.
So, where do I even start? Because every time somebody was speaking, I was like, true that. So going first, I guess, to or maybe to everybody.
I'll reverse the order.
Yeah, no, I don't want to. Usually I'm on the end of the panel where I have to go first. I love that. So like I said earlier, something I've been focusing on with my students this year is about how food helps us make ceremony, because I feel like food is something we take for granted a lot. And so, and also about, so the ceremony that it was helping us make, I think, was building community. Like we all looked like we were doing a thing, like we were cooking, or we were like, you know, my grandparents used to say, what are you doing? All the time. And so we were doing something. We were making food, but I was making the best friendships of my life. And I was never, I got into this program because I paid for 2 of my degrees by being a baker. And also, this is going to sound like a weird job, but I think it is a job, a kitchen job. I used to work in this restaurant where they made like 1 dish a day. And then somebody needed to have the ability to make whatever that was into soup. And so my job was to make whatever that was into soup. So I made a lot of soup, and that was in a vegetarian restaurant. And then I was a baker for 2 degrees, which is a long time for me because I'm a real slow learner. And when I was at the last food summit, I worked with people who helped me learn how to use a knife. I never cut meat. And I learned a lot of things that, like, we didn't use any flour. And I'm actually highly allergic to flour. Like, the whole thing I ever had to do with any food was with food that made me sick. And I grew up real close to the land. Like, I can't think of animals that we ate that I didn't know, you know, like we raised everything. So, like I said, I don't know what I was doing until I became a part of this program. Like, the friends I made, the things I'm doing, it completely, like Krishna was saying, like, changed the course of my life. I have new things to do. Anyway, that's all I want to say about that.
All right. And so you guys already, you know, most of you already have a culinary background, and this mentorship is really, you know, getting you into the depths of, you know, indigenous food, and you're working with all kinds of ingredients. You're learning about things that you didn't know were edible. What are some ingredients that you personally like to use that are maybe like your new favorites, and why are they important to you? Let's go with Daryl first.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
What ingredients have you learned about that you think are important, that maybe are your favorite?
Oh, when it comes to the ingredients, I think my personal ingredients are from my tribe. I love the choya buds. I love the different style of beans, the black, red, brown. And then traveling to the other food summits, I've learned that a lot of the tribes around there, they're they're cultivating their own fruits and vegetables. They have pop-ups. They have co-ops there, and it's just amazing to see that their tribe is gaining the food sovereignty that the nation needs. Supplying their tribal members with vegetables, fruit, from their own lands, and that's great. And another ingredient I really learned to love was the wild rice, and it's just amazing. And it's just you can do anything with wild rice. I mean,
Yeah.
I gotta catch one of Linda Black Elk's, foraging seminars, because I've always been in the kitchen when I'm at the food summits. But I think the next one I'm gonna definitely go with their foraging.
Yeah. Oh, cool. I love wild rice too. What about you, Krisha?
Daryl, it's so funny that you just mentioned that, because I was also watching Linda Black Elk's
Right.
Was that on Monday?
Right,
And
right.
So my family, my tia, my aunt calls me La Reina de la Quinoa, which is like the queen of quinoa, because I find different ways of using quinoa, not just in ways that we've prepared it in Peru, but also ways that people tend to have like repurposed it and started to use it here on Turtle Island, and then also thinking about blending different things together. So that's my go-to. I play with quinoa a lot. Like I use that a lot. And if anybody gets to know me well, you'll find that out about me. But one of the things for me, because I was focusing all of it's our paths are our paths, right? And I focused my energy on learning more about my land, my people's land, right? Which is 3,000 miles away from me. So I've never foraged for these things. I travel to Peru periodically, but I've never been with family to go harvest quinoa. I actually never go at the right time of the year. There's a specific festival that happens in August, and that's winter time. It's like almost winter time there, so it's not the right time to harvest. So I don't usually get to see a lot of stuff happening when I'm there. I eat all the food, of course, but I've never foraged for things. I've certainly had wild rice in my lifetime, but one of the things that really opened my eyes, because I've made so many friends and people send me things from their tribes, I've gotten to taste wild rice from different regions, and now I can actually taste the difference, and I see the difference in color and the difference in flavor, which is amazing. And so that's something I'm super excited about to continue to learn more about. And I got obsessed with it after the last food summit. I started going on YouTube looking for like how you traditionally harvest wild rice, and I'm like literally like down the rabbit hole watching all these videos. Because I think that, I'm going to speak for myself, and I know this is a lot of people's experience, especially as a city girl. I feel very disconnected from my people's lands, being 3,000 miles away, but I also just regionally feel disconnected from the land, because all of my shopping has been done in supermarkets, packaged, and I've had to undo this mentality. I started going to my local farms and buying and going to these, but I'm also a single parent and I don't make a lot of money, and so I have to figure out how to spend my dollar and make it stretch so that I can get the kind of food I want for me and my daughter, and how I want to educate her. I don't want her to have a colonized mind. I'm decolonizing mine, but I'm trying to raise her with a different vision, right? And I want to get it to her young, so that she doesn't take her so many years of work like it has for me to undo all of this stuff that I learned. And it's generational, right? So this is stuff that I'm undoing for generations. So quinoa is my big thing, but also beans, like Daryl said, I totally like. There's specific beans that come from Peru that I love learning how to play with a little bit more. One specifically that's called the frijol canario, sorry. It's a canary bean. It's actually very yellow in color, just like a canary. And it has a very specific taste. I've learned a lot more about different beans from different regions too, that sometimes have more smoky flavors to them naturally. Others have more almost like a meaty flavor to them, which is really interesting. So I love playing with beans as well. And wild rice has been my big mind-blowing thing, takeaway too, because I just never knew that they tasted different. It makes, when you think about it, you're like, obviously that makes sense. but it didn't occur to me because I'd only ever seen cultivated wild rice in a bag. I'd never tasted it from different places, and it's mind blown. So that's it.
All right. Cool. Well, we have a couple comments from Facebook. Charles Catchpole wants to say to Daryl that Daryl taught me how to make choya buds. Love them. And then, and from Krisha, is this from you? Chica Morada? Made some this morning? Made some this week?
Charles made that actually this week.
Okay. All right. Oh, it was all one comment, sorry. And from, Charles Catchpole, yeah, made that this week. Okay, so May, what about you? Your favorite ingredient?
So when I was growing up, it feels like I lived like in a totally different time. Like when I talk with my students, they're like, "Are you like 100 years old?" But I don't know if it was like living in Canada or where I live, but like I remember like the first green thing that we had in the spring was asparagus, and we ate it in everything until like we couldn't stand it. So there was and then we'd eat strawberries till we were sick, or it was just one thing after another. You couldn't wait to eat that thing, and then by the time you ate it so much, you were done. There was you didn't want it for another year. So and then also I'm thinking back to when I used to make soup. I would have to go in, like I might not know what they made yesterday, and I'd have to look through the fridge and then sort of put together what soup I thought I could make from whatever was there. So I don't think, I mean, I have favorite foods for sure, but it's usually whatever's ready this week. So I have made it a point. And if my words are stumbly, it's because I can count the number of like sentences I've said with my voice in the last over 4 months now, out loud. Like I don't have people, like I have been in isolation for over 4 months, and I have probably had less than 10 conversations that are oral. Anyway, I wake up in the morning and I take my dogs across the street. I have a 10-acre park, and I live in town, and we look around and we probably meet 1 or 2 plants a day. And so that's like my grocery store. I go over there and I figure out, you know, what's ready, what are the things, make new friends with my plant relatives, and then I come home and I see what I can whip up. And really, it's like, I think every day I'm just like, oh my goodness, that was the best thing I ever ate in my life. You know, and I eat it a couple times or for a week, and then when that thing is done, I find the next best thing I ever ate in my life. And I'm so excited. Like I said earlier that one of the things I'm trying to do is I studied, and it sounds dumb to study something and then do something because that's opposite, it's wrong. But studying how people see different opportunities in the landscape, we have to start with ourselves. So I'm making sure that if I'm going to be talking about how to see gifts in our landscape, what is nature providing for us for whatever reason, we're not that smart. You know, they're giving us things at certain times because we need them, and learning how to optimize those gifts and to really, really celebrate them, make them beautiful, make them delicious, spend some time with those relatives, getting to know them as you're doing stuff with them. And so like last week, my favorite ingredient was dewberries, because here they have very small seeds and I'm used to them having much bigger seeds. And then also this week, my favorite ingredient is daylilies. They're delicious. But I don't know what it'll be next week. I haven't met them yet.
Awesome. And what about you, Angus?
Oh gosh, everyone's pretty much said every favorite ingredient I've ever gotten to use, and like I agree with what May said. It's like I'll find that favorite ingredient next day, but learning that like spruce tips are edible and how to use sweetgrass in like roasting applications has been one of the craziest things I've learned, and just making different like teas or drinks to pull out the flavor of different herbs that I didn't know were edible when we started. That's all I got.
Awesome. Next question I had is, you know, how do you guys see yourselves working in this movement? How do you guys see yourselves moving around in this native food movement? Let's start with May.
Start with me this time. Okay, so I just went really naively to that first summit and was changed completely by it. I've always been like an outside person, and I wrote my dissertation on how I believe the land is our most patient teacher, and so how teachers need to look to the land and let her do her job. And then all we have to do is like facilitate or optimize those opportunities. So so I started with a garden. We had a garden, and I was like, that's a space, and you know, I can make sure everybody's safe there, and I can make sure stuff happens, or we got permission to be there, or things like that. And from the garden, you know, we started growing things. And I started learning maybe at the food summit, and then I also work with the chefs that I met at the food summit, like at other things, and I'm seeing how people cook outside, not only at food summit but at Boucherie, like with Dave Smoke McCluskey and Tanya Brandt and Rick Palace and in different venues. So it's like having space, and then knowing a few skills, and then seeing how people do things, how they put together summits. Because we also, a bunch of us went to Oneida, and that was more formal sort of occasion, less outside. So there's different ways to do things. Talking regular with Dan Cornelius about his ideas on how to put these things together. So I've gone from just a garden and participating in things to slowly starting to organize my own events here. So like they'll teach you how to take apart atoms here, but they won't teach you how to cook anything. So I mean, you just like, what are you learning? We have to learn how to take care of ourselves. And so I've started doing, and Andy was here. You taught us how to cook too. We've had like several events now, and I have a kitchen in the residential hall where my office is located. So, and then we, on days when we are not cooking and we're not in the garden, we talk about our experiences and how to be more intentional about those. And so what I had done this winter is write several grants to start engaging with my chef mentor partners. And a need here in Virginia, this is not my homeland, but one of the concerns when I was talking with tribal members in Virginia was they were worried about their food security. And as a land grant institution, what our job is to serve the citizens of the state equitably. And so if that is a need, it was my job to figure out how to make that happen. And so going to the food summit and things like that was like, how do we make this happen? So I wrote all these grants here. And that's kind of my promise that I made. If I was accepted in the program, I would at least match grants. Like, you give me a little bit of help, I'm gonna like reel in a bunch of money and like make things happen. So I had written into my grants some of my chef mentor partners that I've been working with and planning, and it was canceled, but we had an indigenous food panel for the spring. And then what we were going to start doing was doing workshops on tribal lands with different communities, working towards our own little sort of regional food summit here. So that's where I came from, where I'm going, what I'm thinking. So if anybody also wants to like partner with me and come teach us how to cook stuff, or come on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. What about you, Krisha?
So May just mentioned that when she first started, it was sort of just starting with a garden and then sort of participating, and now she's at this next level, right? And she's reached this next level. I feel like I'm where she was at when she first started. 2 years ago, and I need to say two things. So first, I started my own garden. I live in an apartment. It's a nice size apartment, but I live in it's a weird area. and I have a small deck. So 2 years ago, I made the promise that and this was a result of going to that first food summit. I was like, you know what? I don't have earth that I can grow in, but I can buy some pots, and I have good sun on my deck, and I'm going to start there. So that's how I started. And I would take you to my deck, but I don't know if the Wi-Fi connection will make it out there. But I have like huge, I started with like some indigenous stuff. So I have like some squash, I have some tomatoes, I have peppers, and then potatoes I tried for the first time this year. My little sprouts are coming up and I'm all excited about it. I keep taking pictures every day of of my little sprouts. And so it started with a very personal journey of my mind's expanded. I didn't think I could do this, but I can, and people are gifting me with all of this knowledge and also this confidence that it's in me. And my family on both sides, both the American Polish side of my family and the Peruvian, we're all like farmers and I have it here. It's here. It's all in here. And I just needed it here because I didn't feel confident in my knowledge. And so going to the food summits has helped me to feel like it's in my blood to know how to, it's all of ours. It's all of our right to food. Food sovereignty is our right? And so to figure out how to make this a realistic thing in my life here in an apartment building, then I can try to do that. So it started there. But as I was thinking about cooking, and I'm in this really weird place, I want to be very honest about where I am in my life. I'm a single parent, and the other parent, the co-parent, also doesn't make a lot of money and lives very far away, 3,000 miles away. So I'm on the East Coast and they're on the West Coast. And I don't have a deep community that all of my friends and my loved ones and people that are my chosen family are scattered all over the country. So I'm a little bit isolated here in some ways. And I have been having this sort of existential crisis as how can I follow this path that I know that I'm on, but also support my daughter and myself. I don't want to live in poverty, but that's kind of where I'm at right now. Like I'm really, really broke. And so I had this conversation with another person. Well, she's a private chef and she works for extremely wealthy people and banks her money and then goes home and enjoys life. And she said, she had a very real conversation with her. And she said, I took it, I have thick skin, so her words didn't matter to me. What she said, and this is a direct quote, she's like, you're being stupid. You need to go work for some wealthy people and bank your money. And then if you want to cook for other people that are in need, then do that on the side, but you need to bank your money. And we had this very funny conversation. I laughed with her about it and then I let it sit. And where I'm still at today is that I don't want that to be the solution. I don't want that to be the solution. I don't want to have to go sell my soul and cook for a bunch of wealthy people in order to survive. There's got to be a different way. So I have completely given I am like praying like nobody's business. Every day I'm lighting candles and like just doing all the things that I do in my spiritual life to ask, especially my abuela, I named my daughter after her. My abuela died with my photograph on her chest. And I believe that she is the one that's guiding me. And so I have been like talking to her constantly lately, being like, I know she had a 3rd grade education. It was like a boss ass B. Like she could do all things. She was a community organizer. She ran her own like bodega, did all the math in her head, didn't need a calculator. Like she was amazing. And I'm like, that's the spirit. I need to like get that in. I need that hustle. I need to focus on my hustle. I don't want to believe that that's the solution is for me to sell myself out in order to provide for my daughter. So I'm hanging on. My goal, my long-term goal is that I want to indigenize culinary schools. That's my long-term goal. I feel like, back to what Angus was saying, that he was like learning French cuisine and this and that and the other thing. And that was my experience in culinary school as well. I went to Johnson & Wales University in Rhode Island, in Providence, Rhode Island. And I was so infuriated by the classes. They literally called it world cuisine, and it was 2 classes. They had a 2-part class, and they shoved all these different kinds of cuisines in this little class. And it did not even include indigenous food at all. Like it was not even in there. And I thought, what is this? What is the purpose of all of this? If we don't feel, and also back to what May was saying earlier when she was introducing ourselves, we haven't been taught to find honor and value in our food systems. And so we result to learning other things, and when we have to decolonize that mind and find ways of utilizing those ingredients, sometimes I still get frustrated with, I don't want to plate it the way that I know, like it looks beautiful this way, but that's the European way of plating something. I want to figure out our own ways to plate and create a different way of plating. And that's why I love watching Brian Yazzi's work and other people, and looking at the ways in which color and texture is built without, I don't know, just without throwing all that other stuff on top of it. And so that's my super long-term goal. I don't know if I'll ever, no, I'm going to put this out into the universe. One day I will be teaching in a culinary school and I will indigenize those spaces. Yet I still know that I'm, you know, as old as I am, I'm still in the beginning parts of my path because I feel like I have so much more to learn. And one of the things I have to get over is this imposter syndrome that I have. Like, I feel like I can never have enough information. I feel like I'm constantly just consuming. But what I learned in the summits is that this is not about consumption of knowledge. This is a reciprocal relationship, both with the land, with each other, with our ancestors. It's all of those things. And so I can't be in this mindset of where I have to consume all this information to then be able to give back. That's BS. I have to stop believing that. But it's that part of me that feels like I don't know enough to teach yet. But luckily, I've met beautiful people like Elena Terry that keep telling me that I've got gifts and I am here for that reason. And so I want to give her props for that, because she's helped me see myself. And so mentorship is, I think, key. That's my message.
Yeah.
I needed that mentorship because sometimes I really don't feel like I belong here yet. So
Yeah, no, that's a real struggle. Daryl, how about you? Where do you see yourself in this movement, and then where do you see yourself in the future?
Well, I see myself as a food warrior. I'm gonna pass on what I've learned. It all started about 2.5 years ago when my wife had Terrell Johnson at her school to talk about indigenous foods and how foods and kinesiology, combined together. When you eat the right foods, your body will be, at one, or in harmony. So I just want to thank Terrell Johnson for teaching me about our traditional foods, choya buds, beans, but where I see myself is I would like to pass on what I've learned in the past 2 years to other Native people, to other communities, to more urban communities, because we don't really have foraging access. We don't really have traditional meat access. So that's what one of my basic long-term goals is, to be able to teach in the urban community about indigenous food sovereignty, indigenous food, decolonizing our meals, so that's where I come from.
Yeah, awesome. And Angus, where do you see yourself, and where do you see yourself in the future?
So really it's like I look at it as I'm a dude who cooks food, and I'm not good at writing grants. I'm not good at organizing events. That's not my tools in my bundle, and that's okay. And it's like the tools that I have is I can feed people. I'm efficient in the kitchen, and I'm a skilled set of hands. And so it's like whatever anybody needs is like, oh, we need people to make this event just happen, not plan it, not set it up, you just need to, cook a lot of food for a lot of people. Okay, I can do that. I'm very much I'm just here to help in any way that I can. If somebody, needs somebody to scoop on a buffet line at an event, or, you just need like some equipment hauled, I'm that guy. I'm very much a career gopher, if you would. And like, that's where I see myself too in the future, is like always, just in the back. I always like being in the back, making the food happen and sending it out, and just knowing that people enjoyed that food, and just continuing to cook food for people to enjoy. That's where my end goal is. Yeah, good.
All right. Cool. Well, thank you guys so much. That is kind of the time we have here. Thank you again, you guys, for inviting me to moderate this panel here. And let's hear from Elena.
Yeah, it was so good seeing all of you. I miss you so much. And I love hearing you talk about your journeys. I can remember, and I don't know, I think Angus can testify that I really do meticulously go through all of the applications so that I know a little bit about each one of my mentees and who they pair the most with. And I remember specifically seeing you, Angus, and knowing that you had worked with different proteins and giving you an assignment to make a sausage, you know, and you're like, how did you know that? But it's one of those things, like May said, in building a stronger community, it's important that we recognize each other's strengths, and that I feel as a coordinator, it's my responsibility to find out a little bit about each one of you. And you are all so amazing and beautiful, and I see you leading in different ways. You inspire me a lot. And so thank you for being in the program and for, you know, all of the work that you're doing when you leave being around everybody and go back to your communities, and those ripples that you cause, you know, they do make everything a little bit stronger. So thank you for everything that you do to my mentees. And Andy, thank you so much for joining us today. I was super excited when you said you would help out. And, you know, if you guys haven't checked out Andy's podcast, The Toasted Sister, definitely do it. She's amazing. Thank you so much for joining us, Andy.
Of course. Of course.
All right.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Yay!
Thank you.
See you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.